Elantris is the first of a number of books we'll be looking at by Brandon Sanderson, and it was his debut novel, actually. This enormous fantasy tale is set in and around the city of Elantris, so-called City of the Gods, because the Elantrians possess powers that border upon the divine. Their city gleams, their bodies are silver with white hair, and they are enhanced in every way, and timeless. And best of all, they are a lottery ticket. Anyone, regardless of gender, class, profession, age, whatever, can be mystically chosen by fate to undergo a magical transformation called the Raoden to become Elantrian. These living gods accepted worship, but were not unreasonable about it. They were fine with other religions, though their existence stuck in the craw of Dorethi priests of Shudereth, who are a real holy book in one hand, sword in the other kind of religion, and didn't like that someone out there was stealing worshippers while having the gall to be unconquerable. Well, one day 10 years ago, something very, very wrong happened with Elantris. Suddenly, all the Elantrians turned into zombies. Not in their minds, mind you, but in every other way. They were physically dead, their skin blemished, hearts were stilled, they were endlessly hungry. Thankfully, though, they were not inclined towards leaving the city to feast on the living. On the contrary, these were poor, pitiful wretches. Their beautiful city was covered in slime and decaying. Those they had aided now feared looking upon them and kept them confined in their city. The neighboring city of Kai is now ruled over by King Iodon, with his son Raoden betrothed to a princess in the kingdom of Teod. Till death do us part gets kind of murky when zombies get involved, though, and that's what happens to poor Raoden at the start of the book. See, the Raoden is still going on, still choosing people at random. So every once in a while, some poor schmuck gets turned into a zombie. So the priests grab them, give them a traditional burial bundle, which fortunately has some food, and tosses them into Elantris as fast as possible. The thing about being an Elantrian now is that, even worse than the endless hunger, which is pretty bad, is pain. Now, they don't feel themselves decaying or anything like that. No, this is far more insidious. It's that pain doesn't fade. Like, Raoden hurts his toe on the first day, but it doesn't stop aching after that. It hurts just as much a week later as it does the moment that he injures it. Scratching his hand and the abrasions, they never stop hurting. Over time, what happens is that one becomes a hoed, the term for those who have been subjected to so much pain that their minds just can't handle it anymore. They just lie down and mutter or whimper or whatever, unable to escape it. To be Elantrian is to be damned. Raoden learns all this thanks to a fortunate meeting soon after his arrival. He gives most of his food to a beggar, only to see in horror as the boy is beaten and the food taken. He learns of their plight from an Elantrian named Galadon, a Dulladen, which is a race less commonly chosen for the Raoden. On the whole, Galadon is very civilized, giving away information and advice for free, and after the offer of a small bit of meat that Raoden still has on him, will aid him in the city for the next 30 days. Galadon, to show that he's the right choice, is a man of his word, sticking with Raoden despite the ideas that he gets into his head, and the fact that no more food is waiting later on. There's no more food coming into Elantris, see. They're all prisoners in here, guards putting them back in if they ever do get out. And those who make a habit of escaping eventually are burned to ash so they stop being troublesome. The only food is what new arrivals bring, so they are regularly jumped by others on entry, people who are working for the 3 gangs of the city. Raoden is disturbed when he sees some poor housewife put in only to be immediately robbed while they can do nothing. He aims to change that. It all starts with the rescue of just one person, Marishi, a jeweler before this all had happened. Raoden and Galadon bring him to a roof where he can't be pursued, and after realizing that they've saved him, is willing to work with them. His task? Leather shoes for them to wear. As Raoden notes, this is no mean feat, no pun intended. There can't be any breaking in period like you normally have with shoes. No chafing or scratching or rubbing. A blister is for all eternity, remember. But his sense of craftsmanship is strong enough to commit him to the task. He's not alone. Soon a trio is collected by Raoden, who put them to work as well. It's one part of his plan. The second is to try to figure out how to fix whatever went wrong when the so-called Raode happened 10 years ago. Luckily, Galadon had a similar thought and already has a small library with books on aeons. Think runes that you draw in the air most of the time. They were the source of Elantrian power. Draw the right aeon and you can heal someone. Or put the right aeon on a metal plate and it can shine brighter than any lamp and be turned on and off with ease. They can even draw aeons right now. It's just that the aeons don't do anything. They just make a light in the air and then vanish. And no one hires zombies for party tricks. The monotony of existence was briefly broken when a Giorn, one of the very high priests of Shadarath, comes onto the wall and does some ceremony, obviously not for the benefit of the Elantrians. Still, his crank antics don't actually call lightning down on them, so Raoden continues with his plan, what some assume was creating his own fourth gang. Among their number is Eandon, one of those 3 tyrants of the city. This one calls himself a baron, says that he was a nobleman before, and is followed for both that reason and the fact he's clearly mad. But a madman with ideas, such as taking over the university so that he can cook old scrolls made of vellum to have something to eat, and promising that he has a plan to raise an army and attack Kai itself. Eandon, Raoden notes, isn't a nobleman at all, though. He's a sculptor named Teon. Galadon, though, notes that he's not the only one reinventing himself, as Raoden calls himself Spirit, despite Galadon having figured out that he's actually the crown prince. It's a secret that's kept so that people will follow him for the ideas rather than his title, or his extremely short royal bloodline. An old man named Kehar, who has been in Elantris for some time, comes to Raoden to be the part of his group, having heard the rumors that he knows how to end the pain and hunger. Raoden says he will get the answer, but he wants him to use his prior skills to clean the building, all the grime that is everywhere inside of the temple. Kehar gets to it, but doesn't get far because the second tyrant is seen in the flesh. Karada, the harshest yet most lenient. Believe it or not, that does make sense. She is very brutal to those who trespass in her territory, but leaves you alone otherwise. However, she sees Raoden's growing power as a threat, so she has brought a small army that's equipped with a rarity in Elantris, steel weapons, intent on breaking Raoden's power now before it grows any further. Well, Raoden happens to know that Karada is a regular Hogan's hero. She's gotten out of the city more than anyone else, but the guards have become wary of her tricks. Raoden offers to get her out of the city and into the palace if she'll only leave them be. A trick that he pulls off by going through the underground river accessed by the ceremonial well. As zombies, they don't have to worry about breathing. Karada, it turns out, didn't have any ill intentions on the outside. All she wanted to do was just leave a necklace for her daughter that she hadn't been able to do before. This need is at the center of what she does. Earlier, Raoden had wondered where all the children were that were put into Elantris, but now we know that Karada has taken them in and cared for them. Her gang feeds and protects them. She knows that he's the crown prince as well, but sees that he's doing what she's doing, making damnation less hellish. She was doing it in a tribalistic way, but Raoden wants to bring it to the entirety of Elantris, to see this city as theirs, their condition an opportunity. The pain and hunger haven't taken Karada yet, because she has unwittingly found the answer that Kehar the Cleaner is gradually learning. They go away so long as you have a purpose. By the time Kehar is done with just the temple, he already knows what the answer is, and happily moves on to the paving stones. And Karada decides that Her entire faction should join with Raoden, that they could end the suffering in Elantris. He even has an idea on filling their empty bellies, because each offering brought in contains seed corn, which they can plant and harvest, especially because Galladon, evidence to the contrary, claims to be a farmer. However, that still leaves 2 other tyrants in this city, and Raoden is causing trouble. He has plotted to kill the children. This draws the warriors of Karada into what would have been a trap if Raoden hadn't spotted it and interfered at the last moment. He overcomes the madness of the Baron by appealing to the sane sculptor within, because you see, when Cahar had completed, he showed his discovery to Raoden, that underneath all the slime and grime, Elantris is not just beautiful, but it's an actual work of art. Once he rubs it away and shows Raoden what's under there, the sculptor emerges and realizes what a treasure he has, the thing that he almost destroyed in his mad attempt to try to destroy some of his enemies. Facing this, he realizes he doesn't need to be a madman anymore, not when he has so many opportunities for his sane mind to appreciate. He and many of his followers likewise join Raoden. But some do defect to the 3rd tyrant, Sheor, whose followers are brutes. They're practically savages. Reasoning that he's worked things out well so far by using reason, Raoden and Galladon sneak in to speak with Sheor, only to discover that diplomacy is highly unlikely to be a solution. Turns out that Sheor is actual nobility. In fact, she is a spoiled brat, a child whose father hushed up her Sheod, and during which her blonde wig was allowed to go in here with her. She'd had one made because of issues with her hair while she was a normal human being, and now, because she has this wig on, all her followers assume that it's actual real hair, which no Elantrian can have. In their mad desperation for any kind of a hope, these men have begun worshipping her. And she has but one thing to say to her flock: "Bring me food!" Her screams for it have whipped them into a frenzy to take ridiculous risks to try to get something for their god. And as they run for their non-existent lives away from her army, even Raoden must concede that diplomacy is unlikely to work in this case. Not with her. Still, Elantris is in the best state that it's been since the Raod. So naturally someone drops a monkey wrench into the works. Ironically, that someone is actually trying to help. And that someone is not just anyone. It's Serene, Raoden's betrothed, who has brought food to feed the Elantrians. A gesture born of a noble heart, more than likely, but will undermine his plans. Food will fill their bellies briefly, but only briefly. And then when she no longer brings them food, everything will be back the way it was before. In Raoden's story, we discover that this damnation is aptly named. As the saying goes, hell is other people, which is really what makes this that way. While their hunger and the issues of their pain are not nothing, the real problem with Elantris is that it has become law of the jungle in here. All Raoden is doing is bringing civilization back to previously civilized people, and doing so by giving them 2 things: hope and purpose. The point he makes about how their condition, even if they are hungry, has freed them because while they want to eat, they don't actually need to eat anymore. No, not even brains. Essentially, a revolution taking place where, instead of the majority of occupations being related to creating food in one way or another, the majority can instead devote themselves to other things, like the way our society does. Raoden has civilized them once again, and it is only the savages, like ancient nomads attacking cities for plunder, that threatens them now. Despite being zombies, he has taught them, ironically, that they can live with their condition.